to Clint and Sean on Sack Heads Radio, radiating elegancy and quality.
So we're back with TAMI J, and we're talking about the 47 bodies of Hillary Clinton and her article on the blacksphere.net. And you know, we're talking about, TAMI, you with us? Oh, BTR, you and I are going to have some serious problems tonight. TAMI, I'm so sorry. If you're out there, please come back to us, because this is just frustrating me. I absolutely hate this. You can catch us live on Spreaker real soon, all the time. Then we'll BTR real soon here on Spreaker.
Hang on, I got something for BTR. So, that's for BTR. It's we may need some new machines here pretty quickly.
Well, no, BTR is going to need some new machines here really quickly. So her article is just incredible. And as you read through, and this is stuff, folks, that mainstream media won't even go near. And that's what's scary.
Okay, so you have two guys run over by a train.
Right.
And the cause of death
me?
was...
Yay!
Hi, Tammy. How are you?
Hi. So I could hear you guys the whole time. I don't know what you were doing.
You know what? Soko made kind of a joke at the break, and he said, "Listen, we're gonna mess with Tammy and all of our listeners, and we're just and really he was playing a joke on us for talking bad about him the whole time. So he says, I'm just gonna make you sound like complete buffoons by having so Tammy could hear you and think she's responding, but you guys are just gonna think that everything's gone down." And so,
now, Tammy, you don't have to go to these extremes.
You don't need to rack the
We'll
shotgun.
straighten them out. I understand.
But that was well played, Soko. Well played.
Hey, Soko, I accepted his Skype request, so I thought he was going to bring me on to Skype, but that didn't work.
I think this is his way of getting even. You know, I think if he figures one of the favorite guests, one of our favorite people who's been a great friend of our show. I also know that I'm pretty sure Rooster's been on hold in the galaxy for a while now, and I think he's messing with him too. I'm afraid if Ken calls in that Soko will hang up.
Yeah, but Soko will hang up on Ken just because Soko's a racist. But that's just a whole other story. And maybe, Tammy, I think Soko is messing with you because he hates women also. I apologize. He is. Listen, he's a walking EEO. Soko, nobody can hear you right now.
While my voice is
nobody can hear you.
I can hear you,
That's what you sound like right now. But she doesn't want to.
You know what? And here's the funniest part. We've said this before, and I'll say this again. If anyone who knows Soko is killing themselves laughing right now, because he is the sweetest human being on the face. And I'm not trying to make up. That is the God's honest truth. He is one of the most sweet human beings on the face of the planet.
He really is.
The fact that he takes this from us is well beyond.
And what's hilarious is when he tries to talk into the microphone, he tries to fit the who thing in his mouth. I don't know who taught him to talk that way.
He's still learning.
But yeah, we need a webcam in here because it's just poor Soko. He'll like bang it on his forehead. It's kind of embarrassing a little bit.
So Tammy, we were talking about the article. At one point, we were talking about the article. I don't know if we're ever going to get back to the article, or if we're just going to.
Okay, what I want to know is really what is so suspicious about two young men who know the area very well, who just happen to take a nap at the same time on a railroad track and get hit by a train? I mean, honestly. What is so? I know a couple people that smoked
What's the big deal?
Right. I've known a couple people who've smoked some marijuana in their day. I don't know of anybody who has ever passed out that. But usually they wake up like hungry for a Twinkie.
Yeah, but not on railroad tracks.
Right, and both of them laying down on the railroad tracks.
Well, and we were talking at the break. Go ahead. All right, I'll go. We were talking at the break, and we were saying, you know, it's kind of like the movie, they live in a small town. They know when that train comes through because I'm sure that whole town rumbles when that humongous Union Pacific train goes rolling through. And it's a lot like my cousin Vinny when the train wakes him up when he's in the hotel on the first night. He said, hey, I
Yep.
thought you said that train never comes through at 5:30 in the morning. And he says, it doesn't. Normally it comes through at 4:45. They know. When they went out to hunt, they know that train's coming. They probably wait for that train to come and go so it doesn't freak out the deer. Like, I'm sure they take that into account. So the fact that they were found on the train tracks initially run over both together,
that's speculation.
It is absolutely insanity.
Yeah, and they're two boys that have been raised in the area hunting. Well, everybody I know that has been raised, I mean, these kids start hunting when they're, you know, I have a friend that was certified and could carry a weapon at age 5. A lot of these kids start when they're young. It's a way of life. They know the territory. They know how to hunt. They know how to deal with the guns. You know, so I'm assuming that maybe some lefties are going to come in and say that we need to restrict trains because they're lethal.
Well, we do, and clearly they're lethal, and that's the problem. And I thought that's what this article was really bringing awareness about. Did I miss the whole point? Okay.
Yeah.
So
we need to especially prohibit them in schoolyards.
Right, absolutely. But why? What I'm curious about is why leave their bodies on a train track? And you would think that the velocity of a train would really do serious damage to a human body. Yep. But you have to take into consideration that perhaps the depending on where it was on the track, the engineer would see something on the tracks begin to slow. I mean, it's going to take miles potentially for a train to stop, but depending on the size of the train. But why not just disappear them? They were clearly overtaken, but why leave their bodies for anything to be found?
Yeah, this is just so bizarre to me, and I just can't imagine that any medical examiner. I just don't know medical examiners that would overlook something like the stabbing and being, you know, the fact that they were dead before the train hit them would have been pretty obvious. So there's nothing of it passes a smell test. It just doesn't from beginning to end. And everything that I've heard about these two boys, and I want to read the whole book. I've read parts of it. But what I've heard about these two boys was they were not partiers. They were good kids. Their idea of fun was hunting deer, for pity's sake.
Yeah, and it's scary. And as you go further on down the list, it gets scarier and scarier. And then, especially when you get to Keith McCaskill, and to me, that's the one that kind of sums the death of those two boys up.
Yep.
113 stab wounds, which, as you and a bunch of people in our chat room have said tonight, that's no suicide or accident. He said ahead of time that he knew he was going to die. If Jim Steed loses the election, the guy running for Saline County Sheriff, my life isn't worth 2 cents. And it'll be interesting to see how long Jim Steed lasted for. But, you know, 113 times. That's either a crime of passion or a crime of total rage. Yeah,
and I'm thinking, well, okay, it's a message that's being sent. You know, that's my thought. There was some rage there, but there also a message. And I do know that a lot of people I've heard from, one source that I have in the area has asked if I ever get to Arkansas or Missouri because they'd like to talk to me in person. Their phone has been tapped off and on over the years. And they said they don't trust the mail because they've received a lot of mail that's already been opened. And because these people knew several people on this big list, and so
and we know she likes to keep lists. That came out during the last election. Yeah. So it's just very interesting. The things that I've heard of people that have, if they've even tried to go against them in any way, or if they might know about this, suddenly they are having the IRS investigate them. Even way back then, this kind of stuff was going on. So there was pressure brought to bear, and people learned to keep their mouth shut. So yeah, I've heard from a lot of people that are still a little bit frightened because they know things and they have been threatened a bit. So it's quite interesting. Yeah, and it's going to see. I can't wait for the next portion of this. I really can't. I can't wait to see how you sum this up, because, like we've said before, you need to do a full-on book for this. This needs to get out there, and obviously, I mean, your Twitter followings and all your friends. We're trying to push the message out as much as we can and share it as often as possible.
Yeah.
But this is a story that cannot go away, and this is a story that cannot be ignored. I don't want to go over the top with making assumptions that she or he knew of this being done or were somehow involved, but it's hard to look away from it and say that there's no way that these 47 people died that were all somehow related to them and they didn't know. I mean, to me, it's just really hard to swallow that down.
Yeah, it seems as though you would either have to believe that the Clintons themselves were dangerous people to be around, or that the people that they employed were dangerous people to be around. I mean, either scenario is not good. So,
well, and I hate to say it, you look at the mob, and the mob boss very rarely goes out and pulls the trigger.
No, they have people working for them, their lieutenants and so forth, that know what needs to be done, and they get it done, and that's all the head guy cares about. Hillary, to my mind, and I've told a number of people this, that I believe that she and Bill have pretty much, their marriage is less a marriage and more a power pact. She is known by everybody. Every book I've ever read, the fellow that was a Secret Service guy, Gary, what's his name, in the White House, wrote about her. I read that book and I was just amazed. The egregious language she used on her Secret Service detail. There they are, ready to take a bullet for her, and she's telling them to get the F out of her way. And that was just on an average day. That wasn't even the bad stuff she said to them. But she is known as a real witch and vindictive and extremely intelligent. Bill is known as being smart enough, but he's got the charm offensive. On his own, he wouldn't get that far because he's a womanizer and he's got his charm going on and he likes to party and have a good time. Hillary could not get that far on her own because she doesn't have any charm in her. So
right. It's almost like a match made in hell.
Yes, exactly. So between the two of them, she's got the brains and the plotting and the vindictiveness and the drive, and he's got the charm and the schmoozing and all that going on, and they get ahead and they get the power. There's no other way to explain somebody that would let a husband behave the way he behaved, or that, he'd take what she dishes out, which is just a lot of vitriol all the time to staff, spouse, everybody. Well,
and like I said, the more that comes out about this, I think the better off people, and the people have to know at the end of the day. The people have to know. Hey, Tammy, while we have you on the line, we have some good news because I don't know if you follow the Ninth Circuit Court at all in California.
I did. I love the Peruta v. San Diego decision, and you know what?
What?
I had Stephen P. Halbrook. He was my guest last Tuesday on my show, and he is the Second Amendment authority in the nation right now. He's written the Founders' Second Amendment, Origins of the Rights to Bear Arms, and Gun Control in the Third Reich. I interviewed him last Tuesday. I also interviewed him a week ago Wednesday when I was subbing on the Bill Post radio show. And in the Peruta v. San Diego case where they found for the plaintiff and saying that the San Diego carry law to get your license was too restrictive when you had to show cause that you were under threat or something, he was one of the scholars cited. So I emailed him and I said, hey, I just got home in time to hear about this decision and that you were one of the experts and scholars that they cited to win the case. So that was pretty exciting for me.
Yeah, I could see why that would be exciting.
Absolutely, and I want to know when, because now this is decided as a Second Amendment issue, and the Ninth Circuit has ruled on this, and I know there's conflicting case law, so it will go to the Supreme Court most likely. But when that happens, I wonder if there will be forced reciprocity between the states. because if one state allows a concealed carry, and clearly it's a violation of the Second Amendment to have show good cause or whatever. Yeah. California has a lot of different. Each jurisdiction was allowed to kind of make their own rules for issuance, and the law showed that just cause had to be shown. Well, if that's shot down, which it has been in the Ninth Circuit as a Second Amendment violation, which first of all, the Ninth Circuit, for those of you maybe on the East Coast who don't know, it's very liberal. It's the most overturned court in the nation. But on this one, they got it right, and actually read their 114-page, whatever it was, decision, and they used actually some very sound logic and historical perspective as well, which I was shocked at.
Two of the judges. Okay, so there was a George W.
Three-judge panel.
There was was it Herbert Walker Bush appointee, Reagan appointee, and then the dissent. It was 2-1. The dissent was a Clinton appointee. So that's the way it ruled. It was very interesting.
But still, the fact that the court was even able to come up with a panel to be able to reach this decision was shocking, because they usually don't. The panels are usually, they don't fall that way. In the
and then they have to go to en banc and.
Right, but I'm wondering if if the Supreme Court affirms this, which I believe they will, based upon their Heller decision and so forth, then are all of the states going to have reciprocity? And does the 10th Amendment prohibit a state, or does the 10th Amendment provide the state the ability to issue permits when in fact it is a Second Amendment right as being recognized by the courts? The 10th Amendment guarantees the state's right only to do things not prohibited by the Constitution or allowed or specifically allowed. But in this case, if the Second Amendment applies to all individuals on a national level, how can any state issue a permit? Because it is a federal. Well, it is a federal right.
I've always had the belief that when it comes to states issuing, I've always had the belief that it was strictly financial and being able to track guns.
Well, of course it is. But my question is, if the U.S.
Too.
Right, if the Supreme Court finds though that it is unconstitutional, does that mean that will the states lose their ability to permit, or will they keep the ability to permit based upon the need for background checks and so forth, which I'm okay with, but will it be forced reciprocity? Will all states or will there be a federal permit?
Well, I don't even think it'll be reciprocity at that point. I think it'll be...
It'd be reciprocity, right? Each state has to recognize another state.
But if it's on a federal level and the federal government says you can't issue permits, then it's not necessarily reciprocity. It just is the federal law of the land.
Then we'd be getting close to what would be a constitutional carry as opposed to a shall issue, may issue, or restriction.
Absolutely. Correct.
And I have a lot of friends that believe in constitutional carry, and I won't ever name them, but some of them in Oregon, some of them in other states, and they say there is no way anybody's going to take away my Second Amendment rights. I don't care what they say. And so I'm telling you, if the gun grabbers tried pushing people too much, because I know a lot of people like that, and they are good law-abiding citizens. And the interesting thing is that in the beginning, when the Bill of Rights was added to the Constitution, all the states that were talking as they were signing this, their thought was that everybody should have the right to carry a gun unless there had been crimes committed by the individual. So if they knew that an individual had committed crimes, they weren't allowed to carry arms. Everybody else, it was expected that they would all be allowed, and it had nothing to do with permits or fees or anything like that. The only thing that curtailed it was if somebody was a known criminal. And that was the person that nobody was going to sell a gun to or that wasn't supposed to carry a gun. And now we've got to this point where, people have to go through all kinds of hoops to get a gun, which, I don't mind the training and things like that, but it's gone too far, I think.
Well, I think a lot of people would seek that training if they had no knowledge anyhow, because usually legal firearm owners and people that want to own guns have a tendency to want to do it the right way, front to back.
Yeah.
So
most people are responsible, law-abiding citizens in all aspects of their life. So why would owning a gun be any different? It wouldn't change any of that. Now, here's an interesting argument, and one that would spark some real debate. Is so what now we know that people who have mental disabilities and physical disabilities, but let's talk about mental disabilities. They have certain rights. ACLU says it all the time, right? They have rights. They have rights. So why would somebody who is not, maybe has some mental illness or defect, they're maybe not a danger to themselves or anybody else, why would they be precluded from owning a firearm just based upon a mental illness or a mental diagnosis?
Well, because you can show just cause that they're a danger to themselves.
Just cause cannot be. Ninth Circuit just ruled, right? You can't use just cause.
No. But you can show that. You can line it up with the same.
Does the Fourth Amendment apply to them?
Absolutely, it does.
Does the First Amendment apply to them?
Absolutely.
Then why would the Second not apply to them?
Well, because
and that's my point, and that's I'm not saying one way or another, but I'm saying it's an interesting argument to have.
Oh,
if
I know.
The Fourth
Amendment
Amendment applies to people with mental disabilities.
Well,
the
not
First
if they're
Amendment
mentally
applies
incompetent.
But we're talking about mental disability, right? Or mental where they need mental treatment. Let's say bipolar or something, which would prohibit somebody on that medication from owning a firearm in some states. So let's say that now that person, why do they not have a right to exercise their Second Amendment? They can exercise their First Amendment rights.
But that curtails. This would almost force the federal government to actually take a serious approach to mental health. And we've talked about this in the past.
Yes, we have.
And I think that this would be something, if this gets affirmed and it starts to go the way that we've just talked about, then now if somebody brings up that argument, it will almost force the hand of the feds to turn around and say, all right, now we can recognize that mental health is a problem and not legal gun owners. Why don't we deal with mental health now? Because that needs to be done.
But how do you deal with that and the gun issue? So how do you deal with mental health if the other amendments apply to them?
Mm-hmm.
Why would the Second Amendment not apply to them? And now you would have to have some sort of constitutional amendment, maybe, or you have to have some form of legislation which can hold constitutional muster to say, hey, if you're a felon or mentally incapable, blah, 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 if you're in an institution or something of that nature.
And it's going to be tough because you now have to define what's mentally incapable.
Right.
They will put a blanket on that.
Yes.
Oh, if you've ever talked to your doctor about depression, and they'll know what you've talked to your doctor about because they have the rights through Obamacare.
Yeah.
If you've ever had a bad day, if you've ever taken
But they'll have to force it. But until then, how do you prohibit the nonviolent ones from owning a firearm? They have no history of violence. They have no criminality. Their only quote-unquote crime is that they have some form of mental disease or mental condition.
But even now we don't know that.
Other amendments apply to them.
But even now we don't know, though.
Right.
So they could walk in right now. If they're in Arizona or a state that has zero CCW requirement other than the felon, then how do they deal with that there? Because it could happen any time.
It could.
You know what I mean? But like I said, that starts to fall on the people that know these people speaking up. It's, being intelligent and
I think it sets the stage for an interesting argument.
Oh, it sure as hell does.
An interesting argument, and one that I don't know that I necessarily want to have because I can argue both sides of that issue straight-faced, right?
Well, I could easily be qualified, I'm sure, in the sense of some people, I would easily be qualified as somebody who may not be eligible, but there's no actual, there's no record anywhere.
Soko, what did you just throw at me? Soko it's break time.
Yes.
Break time.
I can't hear you, Soko.
It's break
Hey, do we have a 900 number I don't know about? What's with that voice?
Oh my God.
Seriously, and you're wearing a licorice thong and high heels?
976 Soko.
I don't understand this.
All right, folks.
What is
Kill me now.
347-205-9399 is our phone number.
Soko,
Tammy
put the bubble
J,
machine
tell
away.
Everybody where they can find you. Tammy, did you go away already?
No,
Okay,
I'm
good.
here.
Oh, yeah? You went away?
Tell everyone where they can find you, please.
Where they can find me? Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm on. You can find me on Twitter at TAMI J, and it's TAMI J. You can find my website is rightvoicemedia.com. I'm very proud of that site. I'm also the editor-in-chief of theblacksphere.net, and I have a radio show, and I love people to call into my show. It's Tuesday nights on the 405media.com at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern.
Tammy J, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tammy, very much.
Guys, I'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Back at
Okay, bye-bye.
You're back at 3.
Your mom's back at 3.
Nobody on that one?